The mahogany boardroom fell silent as Sarah Chen's designer heels clicked against polished marble. 20 executives watched her approach the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle, their quarterly reports trembling in manicured hands. Outside, rain streaked the glass like tears on a giant's face. Sarah had built Chen Industries from nothing immigrant's daughter who clawed her way to the top of the tech world. But success had cost her everything soft inside. Today, she would fire 12 people before lunch. She didn't know that a spilled cup of coffee would shatter the carefully constructed walls around her heart, revealing a truth that would change everything she thought she knew about worth, dignity, and the quiet heroism hidden in plain sight. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The elevator climbed past floors of sleeping offices, each ding marking another level of Sarah Chen's empire. 27 floors. 27 layers of glass and steel and ambition that she had built with her own hands, one 14-hour day at a time. 3:47 a.m. The numbers glowed red on her phone screen as the elevator doors whispered open. The executive floor stretched before her, dark except for the emergency lighting that cast long shadows across the marble. Sarah preferred these hours before the building filled with voices and meetings and the thousand small compromises that came with other people's needs. Her heels echoed in the silence as she walked toward her corner office, past the reception desk, where fresh orchids would arrive in 3 hours, past the conference rooms, where she would later deliver news that would hollow out 12 families' Christmas plans. The quarterly reports were already on her desk, arranged in neat stacks by her assistant. Red numbers bleeding through white pages. The market had shifted faster than anyone predicted. Artificial intelligence was cannibalizing their software division. Investors were asking questions she didn't want to answer. Sarah set down her coffee black, no sugar, same as every morning for 15 years, and opened the first file. Martinez, Elena. Software engineer. Hired. March 2019. Performance. Excellent. Personal notes. Single mother. 2 children. She made a mark with her red pen. The rain against the windows sounded like static. Sarah had learned to work through any noise, any distraction. When you grew up sharing a 1-bedroom apartment with 6 people, when you studied for the SATs by streetlight because the electricity was shut off again, you learned to focus. Henderson, James. QA testing. Hired. August 2017. Performance. Good. Personal notes. Recent cancer diagnosis. Full remission. Another mark. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Sarah, your father wants to know if you're coming for Christmas this year. I told him you're busy, but he asked me to ask anyway. She set the phone face down without responding. Kumar, David, junior developer. Hired, January 2024. Performance. Promising. Personal notes. Just bought first house. The pen felt heavier in her hand. By 5:30, she had worked through 7 of the 12 files. 7 families who would wake up tomorrow in a different world than they went to sleep in. 7 people who trusted that their work mattered, that their place in the company was secure, that the promises made in hiring meetings would be kept. Sarah stood and walked to the windows. The city was beginning to stir below. Early commuters moved like ants along the sidewalks, carrying their coffee and their hope and their assumption that today would be like yesterday. She had been one of them once, before the Stanford MBA, before the first startup, before she learned that empathy was a luxury successful people couldn't afford. The cleaning crew would arrive soon. Sarah gathered the files and locked them in her desk drawer. Some decisions were better made in isolation, away from the possibility of a janitor's curious glance or a security guard's sympathetic nod. She rode the elevator down to the parking garage, where her Tesla waited in its reserved spot. The drive home would take 12 minutes. She would shower, check the Asian markets, and return by 7 a.m. to begin the process of dismantling 12 people's sense of security. The elevator stopped on the 15th floor. A man stepped inside, pushing a cart loaded with cleaning supplies, late 50s, maybe 60, gray at his temples, work shirt with Miguel embroidered above the pocket. He nodded politely and pressed the button for the lobby. "Good morning," he said. Sarah looked at her phone instead of responding. She had learned long ago that acknowledging service workers led to conversations, and conversations led to connections, and connections made difficult decisions impossible. The elevator descended in silence. At the third floor, it lurched to a stop. The lights flickered. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an amber glow. "Maintenance issue," Miguel said, reaching for the emergency phone. "Happens sometimes when it's been running all night." Sarah felt her chest tighten. She had a 7 a.m. meeting with the board. She had 12 termination letters to draft. She had a schedule that didn't include being trapped in a box with a janitor who smelled like industrial cleaner and quiet dignity. "How long?" she asked. Miguel was speaking to someone on the emergency phone. "Yes, executive elevator, between floors 3 and 2. He listened. "Okay. Yes, we'll wait." He hung up and turned to Sarah. 20 minutes, maybe 30. They need to reset the system." 20 minutes. Sarah closed her eyes and counted to 10. When she opened them, Miguel was arranging his cleaning supplies, making room so she could sit on his cart if she wanted. "I'm fine standing," she said. "Sure." He pulled out a thermos and unscrewed the cap. Coffee steamed in the amber light. "Want some?" "It's just gas station coffee, but it's warm." "I don't drink," Sarah started, then stopped. She was about to say she didn't drink gas station coffee, but something in Miguel's face made her reconsider. Not pity, not judgment. Just an offer of coffee between two people stuck in an elevator. "Thank you," she said, "but I have my own." Miguel nodded and poured himself a cup. The silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Sarah found herself studying his hands as he drank calloused, steady, wedding ring worn thin with years of wear. "You work late," Miguel said eventually. "Early," Sarah corrected. "I start early." "Ah," he smiled. "I work late. Been here since midnight." "We probably just missed each other all these years." All these years. Sarah realized she had never seen him before, though he obviously knew who she was. How many people worked in her building that she had never noticed? How many lives moved through her space without her ever seeing them? "You've been here long?" she asked. 8 years next month. Miguel's voice carried pride. "Good job. Steady. Health insurance for the family." Family. Sarah wondered what that meant to him. Children? Grandchildren? A wife who waited up when he worked the late shift? The elevator shuddered and made a grinding noise. Both of them looked up at the ceiling, listening. "Just the system resetting," Miguel said. "Nothing to worry about." Sarah wasn't worried about the elevator. She was worried about the board meeting, about the termination letters, about the 12 conversations that would strip away people's sense of security with surgical precision. She was worried about David Kumar, who had just bought his first house. She was worried about Elena Martinez, trying to raise 2 children alone. She was worried about James Henderson, who had fought cancer and won, only to lose his job. "Are you okay?" Miguel asked. Sarah realized she was gripping her coffee cup so tightly, her knuckles had gone white. She forced herself to relax. "Fine," she said, "just thinking about work." Heavy thoughts for so early in the morning. Sarah looked at him sharply, wondering if he was being sarcastic. But his expression was gentle, concerned. When was the last time someone had asked if she was okay and actually wanted an answer? "Sometimes the hardest decisions come at the beginning of the day," she said, surprising herself with the honesty. Miguel nodded. "I know about hard decisions, had to make plenty myself." The elevator lurched again, then began moving. Sarah felt relief and disappointment in equal measure. The moment was ending. Soon she would be back in her office, back in her world of spreadsheets and strategic planning and necessary cruelties. The doors opened on the lobby. Miguel gestured for her to exit first. "After you, ma'am." Sarah stepped out, then turned back. "Thank you for the coffee offer." "Anytime," Miguel said. "Hope your day gets easier." The doors closed between them. Sarah stood in the lobby for a long moment, listening to the elevator carry Miguel away. Hope your day gets easier. When was the last time someone had said that to her? When was the last time she had said it to someone else? She walked to her car, Miguel's words echoing in her mind. The parking garage was empty except for her Tesla and a beat-up Honda Civic with a baby seat in the back, a janitor's car, probably. Someone who worked nights to support a family, who offered coffee to strangers, who wished for easier days. Sarah sat in her car but didn't start the engine. Instead, she pulled out her phone and scrolled through the termination list one more time. Martinez, Elena. Software engineer. Hired. March 2019. Performance, excellent. Personal notes. Single mother. 2 children. She thought about Miguel's hands, steady and sure as he poured coffee in the amber light of a broken elevator. She thought about the pride in his voice when he talked about 8 years of steady work. She thought about the 12 families who would learn today that steady work was an illusion, that 8 years of loyalty could disappear with a red pen mark on a white page. Sarah started the car and drove home, Miguel's kindness following her like a shadow she couldn't shake. 3 hours later, she was back in her office, showered and caffeinated and armored in a suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The termination letters were typed and printed, waiting in manila folders on her desk. Her assistant knocked and entered. The board meeting is moved to 9 a.m., and Miguel from the cleaning crew would like to speak with you when you have a moment. Sarah looked up from the folders. Miguel? He said it's about the elevator this morning, something he forgot to mention. Sarah's chest tightened. Had she said something inappropriate? Revealed too much during their trapped conversation? She had been careful, hadn't she? Send him in, she said. A few minutes later, Miguel appeared in her doorway, still in his work clothes but somehow dignified in a way that made Sarah's expensive suit feel like a costume. Chen, he said. I'm sorry to bother you. It's fine, come in. Miguel stepped into her office but didn't sit when she gestured to the chairs. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out her coffee cup. You left this in the elevator, he said. Thought you might want it back. Sarah stared at the cup. She had been so distracted after their conversation that she had walked away without it. It was just a ceramic mug from the office kitchen, nothing special. But Miguel had climbed 27 floors to return it. You didn't have to, she started. It's no trouble, Miguel said. I was finishing my rounds anyway. He set the cup on her desk, and as he did, his wallet fell from his pocket. It hit the marble floor and flipped open, spilling its contents. Sarah automatically bent to help gather the scattered items. Business cards, receipts, a few crumpled bills. And photographs. A lot of photographs. Sarah found herself staring at image after image of children. School photos, birthday parties, graduation ceremonies. Dozens of kids of all ages, all smiling at the camera with gap-toothed grins and bright eyes. My kids, Miguel said softly, kneeling beside her to collect the photos. You have a large family, Sarah said, handing him a picture of twin girls in soccer uniforms. Miguel laughed, but there was something complicated in the sound. Not my biological children, I foster. My wife and I, we've been foster parents for 12 years. These are all the kids who've lived with us. Sarah picked up another photo, a teenage boy in a cap and gown holding a diploma. That's Carlos, Miguel said. He was with us for 3 years, just started college at UW engineering program. Another photo, a little girl with pigtails, missing her front teeth. Maria, she was 7 when she came to us. Her parents, well, they couldn't take care of her. She's 14 now, wants to be a doctor. Sarah's hands stilled. She was holding a photograph of a boy who couldn't have been more than 10, thin and serious, clutching a backpack like a lifeline. David, Miguel said quietly. He came to us last month. His foster placement fell through, 3rd home this year. The boy in the photo had eyes that had seen too much, too young. Sarah thought about David Kumar, about to lose his job and his new house. Then she thought about this other David, who had already lost so much that a backpack was his most precious possession. How many children have you fostered? Sarah asked. 40, 3 over the years, Miguel said. Some for a few weeks, some for years. A few we were able to adopt. He gathered the last of the photos and put them carefully back in his wallet. It's why I work nights. Day shift pays more, but I want to be home when the kids get back from school. Sarah sat back on her heels. Miguel worked nights so he could be present for children who had been abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect them. He cleaned offices and emptied trash cans and mopped floors so that kids like David could have a safe place to sleep and someone to help with homework. The coffee you offered me this morning, Sarah said slowly, in the elevator. What about it? You said it was gas station coffee. Miguel smiled. It was. I stop at the 7-Eleven on my way to work. Coffee's cheaper there than the fancy places. Sarah thought about her daily routine, the expensive espresso machine in her kitchen, the imported beans, the careful ritual that started each morning with a $60 cup of coffee. Miguel spent his money on foster children. She spent hers on coffee beans. Miss Chen? Miguel said. Are you all right? Sarah realized she was still kneeling on her office floor, surrounded by the scattered contents of a janitor's wallet, learning that the man who cleaned her building was raising 43 children one at a time. I'm fine, she said, but her voice cracked on the words. Miguel helped her to her feet. His hands were gentle, the same hands that had offered her coffee in the amber light of a broken elevator. Thank you for returning my cup, Sarah said. Like I said, no trouble. Miguel moved toward the door, then paused. Ms. Chen? I hope your day did get easier. He left, and Sarah stood alone in her office, staring at the manila folders on her desk. 12 termination letters. 12 families about to learn that security was an illusion. She thought about Miguel's wallet, full of photographs instead of credit cards. She thought about Carlos, starting college on an engineering scholarship. She thought about Maria, wanting to be a doctor. She thought about David, clutching his backpack like hope. Sarah walked to her desk and opened the first folder. Martinez, Elena, software engineer. Hired. March 2019. Performance. Excellent. Personal notes. Single mother. 2 children. She picked up her red pen, then set it down without making a mark. Instead, she picked up her phone and called her assistant. Cancel the 9 a.m. board meeting, she said, and schedule individual meetings with Elena Martinez, James Henderson, and David Kumar. This afternoon, termination meetings? Her assistant asked. Sarah looked at the photograph Miguel had dropped the boy named David, 10 years old, and carrying everything he owned in a backpack. No, she said. Strategy meetings. Elena Martinez arrived at 2 p.m. wearing the navy blazer she saved for important meetings. Sarah watched through her office windows as Elena crossed the reception area, her movements quick and precise, the way she coded efficient, purposeful, no wasted motion. Sarah had reviewed Elena's file 3 times since morning. 4 years with the company. Consistently high-performance reviews. Lead developer on their mobile platform. Single mother to twin daughters. Age 7. The mathematics of termination were simple. Elena's salary could be redistributed to retain 2 junior developers at half the cost. Market efficiency demanded it, but Miguel's wallet had disrupted the mathematics. Ms. Chen? Elena knocked on the open door. You wanted to see me? Please, come in. Sit. Elena chose the chair closest to the door, an unconscious positioning that spoke of uncertainty. Sarah had noticed this behavior in other employees over the years, the subtle body language of people who sensed their world was about to shift. Elena, tell me about the mobile platform project. Elena's shoulders relaxed slightly. This wasn't the opening she had expected for a termination meeting. We're ahead of schedule, Elena said. The new authentication system is testing beautifully. User engagement is up 37% since we implemented the streamlined interface. And the team? Strong. Really strong. Jennifer and Mark have developed into solid mid-level developers. David Kumar shows exceptional promise. His code is clean, innovative. Give him another year, and he'll be ready for team lead. Sarah made notes. though she had read all of this in the quarterly reports. What would happen to the platform if you were to take on a different role? Elena's face went carefully neutral. Here it comes, her expression said, the careful language that preceded professional execution. The platform would survive, Elena said quietly. Jennifer could handle day-to-day maintenance. But the next facey AI integration we've been planning that would be delayed, maybe killed entirely. It requires someone with experience in machine learning algorithms. And you have that experience. I do. Elena's voice was steady, but Sarah caught the slight tremor in her hands. I spent 2 years at Microsoft working on predictive systems before I came here. Sarah set down her pen. Through the windows, she could see the city below, thousands of people moving through their lives, carrying their own versions of Elena's quiet desperation. Elena, can I ask you something personal? The question seemed to surprise Elena. Of course. What made you choose single motherhood? Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. I didn't choose it, she said. My husband left when the girls were 4. Said he wasn't ready for the responsibility. She paused. But I've made it work. We've made it work. It must be difficult. Balancing career and children. Some days. Elena's hands stilled. But they're worth it. Everything I do for them. This Jobit gives us stability. Health insurance. A future. Sarah thought about Miguel, working nights so he could be home when foster children returned from school. Different circumstances, same motivation, everything for the children. What do your daughters want to be when they grow up? Elena smiled, and for the first time since entering the office, she looked genuinely relaxed. Sophia wants to be a veterinarian. She rescues every injured bird and stray cat in the neighborhood. Isabella wants to build rockets. She takes apart every electronic device she can get her hands on. Elena's expression grew thoughtful. They both love math, love problem solving. I think they get that from watching me code. You're teaching them that women can build things. I'm teaching them that they can build anything they want. Elena met Sarah's eyes directly. That's what this job represents to them, not just income possibility. Sarah felt something shift in her chest, a loosening she hadn't expected. She thought about her own mother, working double shifts at the hospital to pay for Sarah's tutoring. The way her mother's hands had shaken from exhaustion as she helped Sarah with calculus homework at midnight. Elena, I want to discuss something with you. A new position. Elena's back straightened. A position? Head of AI development. You would lead the integration project you mentioned, plus oversee our expansion into machine learning applications. Sarah paused. It would mean a salary increase, significant increase, and stock options. Elena stared at her. I don't understand. The company is evolving. We need people who can think beyond traditional software development. Your background in predictive systems, your leadership with the current team, you're exactly what we need. But the budget cuts. There will be cuts, Sarah said carefully. But not in areas where we're innovating. The AI division will be its own department. You'd have autonomy to build the team you need. Elena's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. Miss Chen, I thought, when you called this meeting, you thought you were being fired. Yes. Sarah stood and walked to the windows. Below, the city pulsed with afternoon energy. Somewhere out there, Miguel was probably sleeping, preparing for another night of cleaning offices and raising children. Elena, can I tell you something? When I was 7 years old, my mother worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. I used to do homework in hospital waiting rooms while she finished her shifts. Sarah turned back to Elena. I learned early that security was temporary, that the only person you could depend on was yourself. It sounds lonely, Elena said softly. It was, but it made me strong. Strong enough to build this company. Sarah paused. Recently, I've been wondering if there's a difference between being strong and being isolated. Elena watched her carefully. What changed your mind? About the position, I mean. Sarah thought about Miguel's wallet, full of photographs instead of credit cards. About 43 children who had found safety in the home of a man who mopped floors for a living. I met someone who reminded me that success isn't just about what you build. Sarah said, It's about who you build it for. At 4 p.m., James Henderson knocked on Sarah's door. She had been dreading this conversation more than Elena's, more than any of them. James was 58 years old. He had been with the company for 7 years, ever since his last employer downsized their QA department in favor of automated testing. His performance reviews were solid but not spectacular. He was reliable, thorough, expensive. He was also 18 months out from a cancer diagnosis that had nearly killed him. James, please sit. He settled into the chair with the careful movements of someone who had spent months learning to trust his body again. Sarah had visited him in the hospital once, during the worst of his treatment. She remembered how small he had looked against the white sheets, how his wife had held his hand while machines beeped their electronic prayers. "How are you feeling?" Sarah asked. "Good, really good." James smiled, and she could see he meant it. "Doctor says I'm in full remission. Clean scans for 6 months now." "That's wonderful news." "Linda and I were planning a trip to Ireland next summer. Always wanted to see the countryside. Figure now's the time, life's too short to keep putting things off." Sarah felt her chest tighten. James was planning a future that her red pen had already erased. "James, I wanted to discuss your role in the company." His smile faltered slightly. "My role? QA testing is changing. Automated systems are handling more of the routine work." "I know." James leaned forward. "I've been training on the new platforms. Took a course at the community college on test automation, on my own time." Sarah looked at his file. There was no mention of additional training, no documentation of his efforts to adapt to changing technology. "You took initiative to learn new skills?" "Had to. I'm not ready to retire, Miss General, especially after." He gestured vaguely at his chest. "After being sick, I realized how much I need this job. Not just for the money, for the purpose, for feeling useful." Sarah thought about Miguel, 8 years of steady work providing identity as much as income. "What did you learn in the course?" James's face brightened. "Fascinating stuff. The automated systems are powerful, but they can't replicate human intuition. They test what they're programmed to test, but they miss the edge cases, the weird user behaviors that break software in unexpected ways. And you think there's still a place for human testers?" "I think there's a place for human testers who understand automation, who can work with the systems, guide them, catch what they miss." James paused. "I've been documenting some of the gaps I've found. Creating protocols for hybrid testing human insight combined with machine efficiency." Sarah made a note. "Have you shared this documentation with anyone?" "I was hoping to discuss it with you, actually. I think it could save the company money while improving quality." Sarah set down her pen and studied James. Here was a man who had faced his own mortality and emerged determined to contribute, to matter. While she had been planning his termination, he had been planning the future of his department. "James, what would you say if I told you we were considering expanding the QA department rather than cutting it?" His eyes widened. "Expanding?" "A new division focused on AI quality assurance. The systems Elena Martinez is developing will need sophisticated testing protocols. Human oversight combined with automated efficiency." Sarah paused. "We'd need someone to head that division. Someone with experience in traditional QA and training in automation." James stared at her for a long moment. "Are you offering me a promotion?" "I'm offering you the chance to define the future of quality assurance at this company." Tears gathered at the corners of James's eyes. "Miss Chen, Linda's going to. She's been so worried. We both have. The medical bills, even with insurance. The position comes with a salary increase and enhanced medical benefits." James wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll take the weekend to think about it. Monday morning, we'll discuss your vision for the new department." After James left, Sarah sat alone in her office as shadows lengthened across the floor. 2 conversations down, 1 to go. The hardest one. David Kumar arrived at 5:30, nervous energy radiating from his 26-year-old frame. Fresh out of college, 2 years with the company, ambitious and talented, and completely unaware that his name had been on the termination list. David, Thank you for staying late. No problem. Miss Chen, is this about the authentication module? Because I think I found a way to optimize the response time by another 15%. Sarah smiled despite herself. David's enthusiasm was infectious, his mind quick and curious. Elena was right. Given time, he would be exceptional. Actually, I wanted to discuss your career trajectory. David straightened in his chair. My trajectory? You've been here 2 years. Tell me about your goals. Long term? I want to understand every aspect of software development. Front end, back end, mobile, web, AI integration, all of it. David's words came faster as he warmed to the subject. I know I'm junior level now, but I'm willing to put in the work. Extra hours, additional training, whatever it takes. And short term? David's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. Short term, I want to prove myself, show that promoting me was the right choice. I just bought my first house, biggest financial commitment of my life. I want to make sure I'm valuable enough to the company that... He trailed off, perhaps realizing he was revealing too much vulnerability. That your position is secure, Sarah finished. Yes. Sarah thought about the other David, 10 years old with everything he owned in a backpack. This David had built his security, careful education, job, mortgage, the traditional markers of adult success. But security was still fragile, still dependent on the whims of spreadsheets and market forces. David, what if I told you that your position is more than secure? What if I told you that we're planning to fast-track your development? I'd ask what the catch is, David said with a nervous laugh. No catch. Elena Martinez is being promoted to head our new AI division. She's requested you as her deputy. David's mouth fell open. Deputy? You'd be second in command of the most important new initiative at the company. It would mean increased responsibility, accelerated learning, and yes, a significant salary bump. But I've only been here 2 years. Elena sees potential in you. After our conversation today, so do I. Sarah leaned forward. The question is, are you ready for the challenge? David was quiet for a moment, processing. Miss Chen, can I ask why? I mean, I'm grateful, but this seems like a big opportunity for someone at my level. Sarah considered her answer. How to explain that a janitor's wallet full of foster children's photographs had changed her understanding of what success meant. David, this company was built on the idea that technology should serve human needs. Lately, I've been reminded that the humans inside the company matter as much as the ones outside it. She paused. You're talented, you're dedicated, and you're hungry to learn. Those qualities are rarer than you think. David smiled, expression of pure joy that transformed his entire face. I won't let you down. I know you won't. After David left, Sarah remained at her desk as the building emptied around her. The 12 termination letters sat in their manila folders, untouched since morning. 12 families who would keep their security for another day. She thought about the mathematics of her decision. Promoting Elena, expanding James's department, fast-tracking David would cost the company money in the short term. The board would have questions. Investors would want explanations. But Miguel's words echoed in her mind. I hope your day gets easier. Some days weren't meant to be easy. Some days were meant to be right. Sarah gathered the termination letters and fed them into her paper shredder, watching 4 years of strategic planning disappear into ribbons of white paper. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Sarah, your father made his famous dumplings, too many for just us. Want to come over? For once, Sarah didn't hesitate. She typed back, on my way. As she gathered her things to leave, Sarah caught sight of her reflection in the dark windows. Same expensive suit, same carefully styled hair. But something in her expression had shifted. The armor was still there, but it no longer felt like a prison. She rode the elevator down 27 floors, past the empty offices where tomorrow Elena would begin building the future, where James would design quality systems, where David would learn to lead. On the 3rd floor, the elevator stopped. Miguel stepped inside, beginning his shift. He nodded politely, then recognized her. Miss Chen, working late again? Actually, I'm leaving early for once. Miguel smiled. Good for you. Family time is important. Miguel? Sarah said as the elevator descended. Thank you. For what? For reminding me what matters. Miguel looked puzzled, but before he could respond, the doors opened on the lobby. Sarah stepped out, then turned back. How's David doing? The boy in the photo? Miguel's face lit up. Better. He's been with us 6 weeks now. Starting to trust that this placement is different. Yesterday he asked if he could put his things in the dresser instead of keeping them in his backpack. That's progress. It's everything, Miguel said. Trust is everything. The elevator doors closed, carrying Miguel up to begin another night of quiet service. Sarah stood in the lobby for a moment, thinking about trust. Elena trusting that her hard work mattered. James trusting that his experience had value. David trusting that opportunity was real. Miguel trusting that 43 children could find safety in his home. Sarah trusting that doing right mattered more than doing profitable. She walked to her car, Miguel's words following her into the night. Trust is everything. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Board meetings and investor calls and the 1,000 small compromises that came with leadership. But tonight, she would eat her father's dumplings and remember what it felt like to build something that served people instead of profits. Tonight, trust was enough. 3 weeks later, Sarah arrived at the office at 6 a.m. instead of her usual 3:47. The building felt different in the dawn, lightless like a fortress, more like a place where people came to build things together. Elena's AI division had claimed the entire 19th floor. Through the glass walls, Sarah could see David at a whiteboard, sketching algorithms while Elena and 2 new hires watched. The energy was infectious, the kind of focused excitement that happened when smart people were given meaningful problems to solve. James had transformed the 15th floor into what he called the quality lab. Banks of monitors displayed testing protocols running in real time, human analysts working alongside automated systems to catch the errors that machines missed. Yesterday, his team had identified a security vulnerability that could have cost the company millions. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. Board meeting moved to 9 a.m. Richard Blackstone requested the change. Richard Blackstone, senior partner at Meridian Capital, the company's largest investor. Sarah had been expecting this call for weeks ever since word leaked that she had promoted 3 employees instead of laying them off, that she had expanded payroll during a quarter when profits were down. The mathematics of compassion were complicated to explain to men who thought in quarterly returns. Sarah stopped by the company kitchen for coffee and found Miguel restocking the supply cabinet. She had started arriving later partly to cross paths with him. These brief conversations had become an anchor point in her day. Morning, Miguel. Ms. Chen? Good morning. He gestured to the coffee machine. Fresh pot. Made it strong today. Sarah poured herself a cup, no longer embarrassed to be seen drinking office coffee instead of her usual expensive blend. How's David doing? Miguel's face brightened the way it always did when she asked about the children. Really good. He joined the school chess club. Turns out he has a gift for strategy. Miguel paused, organizing paper cups with the same care he brought to everything. He asked me something interesting yesterday. What's that? He wanted to know if success meant having enough money to never worry, or if it meant having people who cared whether you came home safe. Sarah set down her coffee cup. What did you tell him? I told him it was a good question, one that most adults spend their whole lives trying to answer. Before Sarah could respond, her assistant appeared in the doorway. Ms. Chen, Mr. Blackstone is here early. He'd like to speak with you before the board meeting. Sarah felt her chest tighten. Richard Blackstone early was never good news. Send him to my office, Sarah said. She turned back to Miguel. I should go. Good luck, Miguel said. Remember, trust is everything. Richard Blackstone was studying the city view from Sarah's windows when she entered. 62 years old, silver-haired, expensive suit that probably cost more than Miguel made in a month. He had been one of her earliest investors, back when the company was just an idea and a business plan. Richard, you're early. Sarah. He turned from the windows, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk." Sarah gestured to the seating area, but Richard remained standing. "I've been reviewing the quarterly numbers," he said. "Payroll is up 18%. You've created 2 new divisions and hired 12 additional employees. The AI division is already showing promising results." During a quarter, when profits are down 23%. Richard's voice was calm, but Sarah caught the edge beneath it. "Explain to me how expanding payroll serves shareholder interests." Sarah had rehearsed this conversation in her mind dozens of times. The logical arguments, the long-term projections, the market analysis that supported her decisions. But standing in her office with Richard's skeptical gaze weighing on her, the numbers felt less important than the photographs in Miguel's wallet. "Richard, when you first invested in this company, what did you see?" The question seemed to surprise him. "I saw potential, a smart CEO with a vision for scalable technology solutions." "And what was that vision?" "Software that could adapt to human needs rather than forcing humans to adapt to software." Richard frowned. "What does this have to do with your staffing decisions?" "Everything." Sarah walked to her desk and pulled out Elena's project files. Elena Martinez has developed an AI system that learns from user behavior patterns. It doesn't just respond to commands, it anticipates needs. I've read the reports. James Henderson's quality protocols have identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in our existing systems. Vulnerabilities that our automated testing missed. His team prevented what could have been catastrophic security breaches. Richard's expression softened slightly. "Sarah, I'm not questioning the quality of the work. I'm questioning the timing. Expanding during a downturn is exactly when you find the best talent." Sarah set down the files. David Kumar was about to be poached by Google. Elena had interviews lined up at Amazon and Microsoft. James was considering early retirement. "We kept them because we invested in them. At considerable cost. At considerable value." Sarah met his eyes directly. "Richard, you've known me for 8 years. When have I made decisions based on sentiment rather than strategy?" Richard was quiet for a moment, studying her. "That's what concerns me. This doesn't feel like strategy, it feels like..." "Like what?" "Like you've lost your edge." The words hung in the air between them. Sarah thought about her edge, the cold calculation that had built this company, the willingness to make hard decisions without flinching. Had she lost it? Or had she simply remembered that the sharpest blade cuts everything, including the hand that wields it? "Richard, can I tell you a story?" He glanced at his watch. "Sarah, 3 weeks ago, I was trapped in an elevator with a janitor named Miguel. We talked for 20 minutes. Do you know what I learned?" Richard's expression suggested he didn't particularly care, but he remained silent. "I learned that he's raised 43 foster children over 12 years. Kids who had nowhere else to go. He works nights, so he can be home when they get back from school." Sarah paused. "One of those kids just started college on an engineering scholarship. Another wants to be a doctor. Miguel gave them stability, possibility, hope. That's admirable, but he makes $35,000 a year, Richard. $35,000. And he's changing the world one child at a time." Richard frowned. "What's your point?" "My point is that I've been thinking about success all wrong. Miguel has less money than anyone in this building, but he's the most successful person I've ever met." Sarah walked back to the windows. "He reminded me that companies aren't just profit engines, they're communities, they're families. They're places where people spend the majority of their waking hours trying to build something meaningful." "Sarah, I respect your evolution. But Meridian Capital invested in a business, not a social experiment. And you'll get your return, better than you expected." Sarah turned back to Richard. "But you'll get it because we're building something sustainable. Employee loyalty. Innovation driven by purpose rather than fear. Quality that comes from people who care about their work." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "The board is going to want specifics, projections, timelines for return on investment. And they'll get them. Elena's AI platform will be market-ready in 6 months. James's quality protocols will save us millions in prevented failures. David's deputy leadership will accelerate our development cycle by at least 20%. Sarah paused. But more than that, we'll have built something that attracts the best talent, retains institutional knowledge, and creates the kind of workplace culture that drives long-term success. Richard studied her with the calculating gaze that had made him millions in venture capital. You're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to trust the vision you invested in 8 years ago. Software that adapts to human needs. A company that treats humans like humans. And if you're wrong, if this compassionate capitalism experiment fails, Sarah thought about Miguel's words. Trust is everything. Then I'll take full responsibility. But I'm not wrong, Richard. I've spent 8 years optimizing for profit. Now I'm optimizing for people. And people, when they're valued, when they're invested in, when they trust that their work matters, people create results that no algorithm can predict. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. Richard asked hard questions. Other investors demanded projections. Sarah presented data, financial models, market analysis, all the numbers that justified her decisions. But what convinced them wasn't the spreadsheets. It was Elena's demonstration of the AI platform, responding to user needs with an intuition that felt almost human. It was James's presentation on quality protocols that had already saved the company more than the cost of his entire department. It was David's confident explanation of development timelines that reflected both technical expertise and natural leadership. It was the energy in the building, the buzz of people who believed their work mattered. After the investors left, Sarah found herself alone in the conference room, staring at the presentation slides still glowing on the screen. She had won, but the victory felt different than she expected. Less like conquest, more like homecoming. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. Your father wants to know if you're coming for dinner Sunday. I told him you were probably too busy, but he made me promise to ask. Sarah typed back immediately. Tell him I'll bring dessert. At 8 p.m. the building was nearly empty except for the night crew. Sarah found Miguel in the supply room, organizing cleaning supplies with the same methodical care he brought to everything. Miguel. He looked up, surprised. Ms. Chen. Working late again? Actually, I wanted to thank you. For what? Sarah gestured toward the elevator. For the conversation we had 3 weeks ago. It changed everything. Miguel looked puzzled. We just talked about coffee and elevators. You talked about your children, your family, your work. Sarah paused. You reminded me that success isn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you contribute. Miguel smiled. Sounds like something David would say. The boy's getting philosophical in his old age. How is he doing? Good. Really good. Miguel's expression grew thoughtful. You know what he told me yesterday? He said he finally understands the difference between a house and a home. A house is just walls and windows. A home is where people know your name and care whether you're okay. Sarah felt something shift in her chest, the same loosening she had experienced weeks ago in the broken elevator. Miguel, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret it? The sacrifices you've made for the children? Miguel considered this seriously. I used to think sacrifice meant giving up something you wanted for something you had to do, but raising these kids, it's not sacrifice. It's investment. Every sleepless night, every worried conversation, every dollar spent on school supplies instead of something for myself, it all comes back multiplied. In what way? In watching Carlos graduate from college, in seeing Maria discover she loves chemistry, in David learning to trust that some adults keep their promises. Miguel paused. In knowing that 43 kids learned they were worth someone's time and attention and love. Sarah thought about Elena building AI systems that would touch millions of lives, about James preventing failures that could have devastated user trust, about David learning to lead with both competence and compassion. Miguel, what would you say if I told you that you changed how I run this company? I'd say you give me too much credit. Change comes from the inside. I just reminded you of something you already knew. What's that? That success isn't about standing on top of everyone else. It's about lifting people up with you. Sarah walked to the windows overlooking the city. Below, thousands of lights twinkled in office buildings and apartments, each one representing someone's life, someone's dreams, someone's quiet struggles and small victories. Miguel, this building, do you think of it as a house or a home? Miguel joined her at the windows. Used to be a house, just walls and windows and floors to clean. But lately it feels more like home. What changed? People started caring about each other. You started seeing employees as family instead of expenses. Elena started mentoring the junior developers. James started sharing his knowledge instead of hoarding it. David started asking how he could help instead of just what he could get. Sarah smiled. And you? You've always been here, taking care of everyone. That's what parents do. Miguel said simply. They take care of the family. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city pulse with evening energy. Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a childhood of scarcity to building an empire, from optimizing for profit to investing in people. Miguel, she said finally, thank you for teaching me the difference between a house and a home. Miguel smiled. Thank you for building both. As Sarah rode the elevator down to the parking garage, she realized that the building no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like what Miguel had called ithome, a place where people knew your name and cared whether you were okay. Her phone buzzed with a message from Elena. The AI platform just passed final testing. We're ready for launch. Another message from James. Security audit complete. 0 critical vulnerabilities found. A third from David. Team meeting tomorrow to discuss expansion plans. Thank you for believing in us. Sarah sat in her car for a moment, reading the messages. 3 weeks ago, these people had been line items on a termination list. Tonight, they were family members sharing good news. She thought about Miguel's wallet, full of photographs instead of credit cards. About David the boy, learning to trust that some placements were permanent. About Carlos and Maria and 42 other children who had found safety in the home of a man who measured success in small victories and quiet kindnesses. Sarah started her car and drove home through the city streets, carrying with her the understanding that the most valuable things couldn't be calculated on spreadsheets. Trust, purpose. The knowledge that your work mattered to something larger than quarterly profits. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, it always did. But tonight, she would call her parents and plan Sunday dinner. She would think about Elena's children learning that women could build anything they dreamed. She would remember James planning his trip to Ireland, trusting that the future was secure. She would picture David at his whiteboard, sketching the architecture of tomorrow. And she would carry with her Miguel's lesson, that the highest form of success was creating a place where people could flourish, where 43 foster children could learn they were worth someone's love, where a janitor's wisdom could transform a CEO's understanding of what really mattered. In the end, success wasn't about what you built, it was about who you built it for. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the lobby of Chen Industries, watching a crowd gather for the company's first annual Family Day. Children ran between booths displaying employee projects while their parents explained complex algorithms in simple terms. The sound of laughter echoed off marble floors that had once known only the click of hurried heels and the whisper of ambitious secrets. Elena's twin daughters pressed their faces against the glass walls of the AI demonstration room, watching their mother's creation respond to voice commands with an intelligence that seemed almost magical. Sophia pointed at the screen and whispered something to Isabella, who nodded seriously before raising her hand to ask Elena a question about machine learning. They want to know if the AI dreams, Elena told Sarah later, her eyes bright with pride and amusement. Isabella thinks anything that's smart must have an imagination. What did you tell her? That maybe dreaming is just another form of pattern recognition, and that the best dreams always involve helping other people. Across the lobby, James Henderson was demonstrating quality testing protocols to a group of teenagers, including several of Miguel's foster children. His presentation had the easy confidence of someone who had found his purpose no longer just catching errors, but teaching the next generation how to build systems that worked. "Mr. Henderson," one of the kids asked, "how do you know if something is really safe?" James smiled. "You test it the way someone who cares would test it. You imagine it's protecting something precious to you." David Kumar had claimed a corner of the lobby for a display about leadership development. Sarah watched him explain project management to Miguel's 10-year-old David, the boy who still carried a backpack but now filled it with books instead of survival necessities. "The most important part of being a leader," David was saying, "is remembering that you're responsible for other people's dreams. When you make decisions, you're not just thinking about code or profits, you're thinking about families." The boy nodded solemnly, as if recognizing something important in the words. Sarah found Miguel near the coffee station, wearing a clean button-down shirt instead of his usual work uniform. He was surrounded by children of various ages, some current foster kids, others who had grown up and returned to celebrate with the man who had given them stability. "Miguel," Sarah approached, "you clean up well." He laughed. "Linda insisted, said if I was going to meet the CEO officially, I needed to look respectable." "Where is Linda?" "I'd love to meet her." Miguel gestured toward the AI demonstration, where a woman with kind eyes was asking Elena detailed questions about algorithmic bias. "She's a social worker, wants to understand how technology might help kids in the system." Sarah watched Linda interact with Elena, two women who had dedicated their lives to creating better futures for children, run through code, one through care. "Miguel, can I steal you for a moment? There's something I want to show you." They took the elevator to the 27th floor, to Sarah's office. But instead of going inside, Sarah led him to a conference room he had probably cleaned hundreds of times but never entered as a guest. "Have a seat," Sarah said. Miguel settled into one of the leather chairs, running his hand along the polished table with the appreciation of someone who knew how much work it took to keep things beautiful. "Miguel, 6 months ago you said something that changed my life." "Which thing?" "I say a lot of things. Linda's always telling me I talk too much." Sarah smiled. "You said that hope is everything, that trust is everything." "Did I? Sounds like something I'd say." "You did, and you were right." Sarah pulled a folder from her briefcase. "I wanted to share something with you. The quarterly reports came in yesterday." She opened the folder and spread the papers across the table. Charts and graphs and columns of numbers that told the story of a company transformed. Revenue is up 37%. Employee satisfaction scores are the highest in company history. Customer retention is up 42%. We've been approached by 3 major competitors wanting to know how we're attracting such exceptional talent. Miguel studied the reports with the careful attention he brought to everything. "These are good numbers. They're exceptional numbers. Elena's AI platform launched last month and already has over 2 million users. James's quality protocols have been adopted by 5 other companies. David's leadership development program has a waiting list. You must be proud." "I am. But that's not why I'm showing you this." Sarah pointed to a specific line item. "Do you see this?" Miguel followed her finger to a section labeled Employee Development Fund. "We're investing $2 million annually in continuing education, family support services, and what we're calling life transition assistance. Money for employees who want to go back to school, who need help with childcare, who are facing personal crises." Miguel looked up at her. "That's generous." "It's not generosity, Miguel. It's investment. When you take care of people, they take care of the work. When they trust that the company cares about their whole life, not just their productivity, they give you everything they have." Sarah pulled out another document. "But there's something else. The board approved a special initiative." She slid the paper across to Miguel. At the top, in bold letters, "The Miguel Santos Scholarship Fund." Miguel stared at the document, his eyes widening as he read. "Full college scholarships for children aging out of the foster care system," Sarah explained. 20 scholarships per year, renewable for 4 years. Academic support, mentorship programs, Internship opportunities. Miguel's hands were shaking slightly as he held the paper. Miss Chen, this is. It's named after someone who showed me that success is measured by how many people you lift up with you. Someone who taught me that the most important questions aren't about profit margins, they're about whether children have safe places to sleep and whether they believe they're worth someone's investment. Tears gathered in Miguel's eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help us select the recipients. Say you'll be on the advisory board. Say you'll let us learn from your 43 years of experience helping kids believe in their own potential. Miguel wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Ms. Chen, Sarah, I'm just a janitor. No, Sarah said firmly. You're a teacher. You're a father. You're a man who has changed more lives than most CEOs ever will. You're exactly the kind of person who should decide which kids get a chance at college. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of possibility settling between them. Can I ask you something? Miguel said finally. Anything. That morning in the elevator, when you seemed so stressed, what were you planning to do? Sarah had known this question would come eventually. The truth sat heavy in her chest, a reminder of how close she had come to making decisions she could never have undone. I was planning to fire 12 people, including Elena, James, and David. Miguel absorbed this quietly. What changed your mind? You did. Your wallet full of photographs. Your stories about Carlos and Maria and David. The way you offered me coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world. Sarah paused. You reminded me that behind every employee number is a family. Behind every budget cut is someone's sense of security. And now? Now I remember every day that leadership isn't about making hard decisions, it's about making the right decisions, even when they're expensive. Sarah gestured toward the reports. It turns out that treating people like family isn't just morally right, it's strategically brilliant. Miguel smiled. My grandmother used to say that kindness is the best investment. The returns always surprise you. They returned to the lobby to find the family day in full swing. Sarah watched Elena's daughters trying to teach the AI system Spanish words, their laughter mixing with the electronic responses. James was deep in conversation with Linda about quality control in social services. David was sketching organizational charts with his young namesake, showing him how teams could be structured to support rather than compete with each other. Miss Chen? A voice behind her. Sarah turned to find Carlos, Miguel's former foster son, now a sophomore at the University of Washington. Tall, confident, carrying himself with the quiet assurance of someone who had learned he was worth investing in. Carlos, Miguel talks about you constantly. Carlos smiled. He talks about you too. Says you're changing how business works. I'm trying to change how I work. Your father, Sarah caught herself. Miguel taught me some important lessons. He does that. Carlos looked around the lobby, taking in the scene of families and colleagues celebrating together. This feels different from other companies I've visited. More like home. That's exactly what we're trying to build. Carlos hesitated, then said, Ms. Chen, I'm studying computer engineering, but I'm also taking business classes, learning about leadership, organizational behavior. After I graduate, would there be a place for someone like me here? Someone like you? Someone who wants to build technology that serves families. Someone who understands that companies can be communities. He paused. Someone who learned from Miguel that success is about how many people you help along the way. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. Carlos, there will always be a place here for people who share those values. As the afternoon wound down, families began gathering their things and saying goodbyes. Sarah found herself standing with Miguel near the main entrance, watching the ebb and flow of people who had become more than employees. They had become family. Miguel, Sarah said, can I tell you something? Of course. 6 months ago, I thought I was successful. I had money, power, influence. I had built something impressive. Sarah watched Elena help her daughters into their coats. But I was lonely. I had optimized for everything, except the things that actually matter. And now I understand the difference between achievement and fulfillment, between building a business and building a community. Sarah paused. You gave me that gift. In 20 minutes in a broken elevator, you showed me what success actually looks like. Miguel was quiet for a moment, watching his own family gather near the door, Linda surrounded by current and former foster children, all of them talking at once, all of them clearly loved. Sarah, he said finally, can I tell you something my grandmother told me when I was young? Please. She said that every person you meet is carrying something heavy. Your job isn't to take their burden away, it's to help them carry it a little easier. Miguel smiled. That's all I did in the elevator, helped you carry something heavy for a few minutes. And changed everything. We changed everything. You made the hard choices. You took the risks. You trusted that caring about people wouldn't make you weak. Miguel gestured toward the lobby, where David Kumar was showing his young namesake how to sketch building designs. Look what that trust built. Sarah looked around at the scene-eat Elena discussing college plans with teenagers who were learning they had futures worth planning for, at James explaining to children that quality meant caring enough to get things right, at Linda and Miguel surrounded by young people who called them mom and dad without biological obligation. Miguel, Sarah said, what would you say if I told you that this company has become the family I never thought I could have? I'd say that's what happens when you stop building walls and start opening doors. The lobby was nearly empty now, just the cleaning crew beginning their evening rounds. Sarah and Miguel stood together in the space that had become both workplace and home, watching the last families make their way to the parking garage. I should let you get to work, Sarah said. Actually, Miguel smiled, I have something to tell you. I'm retiring. Sarah felt a moment of panic. Retiring? Miguel, if this is about money. It's not about money, it's about time. Miguel's expression was gentle but firm. Linda and I have been foster parents for 12 years. We want to spend our remaining time focusing completely on the kids. Carlos is in college, Maria starts high school next year, and David is finally ready to trust that we're not going anywhere. But Miguel, Sarah, you don't need me anymore. You've learned what I spent 43 children teaching me, that success isn't about what you accumulate, it's about what you give away. Miguel paused. Besides, I'm not really leaving. I'll be on the scholarship advisory board. I'll be here for family days and company picnics. I'll just be here as family instead of as staff. Sarah felt tears gathering in her eyes. What will I do without our morning conversations? You'll keep doing what you're doing, building a place where people matter, creating opportunities for families like Elena's and James's and David's. Miguel smiled. And maybe sometimes you'll remember that the most important conversations happen when you're willing to share coffee with strangers. They hugged a real hug, the kind shared between family members who don't see each other often enough. Miguel, Sarah said as they separated, thank you for teaching me that trust is everything. Thank you for proving it's true. As Miguel gathered his things and headed for the elevator, Sarah remained in the lobby, surrounded by the quiet energy of a building settling into evening. Tomorrow, Elena would continue developing AI that served human needs. James would refine quality systems that protected user trust. David would lead with the kind of compassion that built lasting success, and 43 children would grow up knowing they were worth someone's investment, their futures bright with possibility, because a janitor and a CEO had shared 20 minutes in a broken elevator and learned that the most valuable things couldn't be measured in dollars. Sarah walked to the windows overlooking the city, watching lights come on in thousands of buildings where people were finishing their work and heading home to families. She thought about her own journey, from a frightened child doing homework by streetlight to a woman who had learned that the greatest luxury wasn't financial security, but the knowledge that you mattered to something larger than yourself. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Dinner is at 6. Your father made extra dumplings. Sarah typed back. On my way. And Mom? Tell Dad I'm bringing someone special to meet him next Sunday. Her name is Elena, and she has twin daughters who would love to hear his stories about building things. As she gathered her things to leave, Sarah caught her reflection in the dark windows. Same face, same hands, same eyes, but everything behind them had changed. The woman in the reflection looked like someone who had learned the difference between a house and a home, between achievement and fulfillment, between standing on top of everyone else and lifting people up with you. She took the elevator down to the parking garage, past floors where families had gathered to celebrate not just business success, but human connection. Past rooms where children had learned that adults could be trusted, where employees had discovered that companies could care about more than profits, where a janitor's wisdom had transformed a CEO's understanding of what really mattered. In the garage, she noticed Miguel's old Honda Civic was gone, replaced by a newer car with multiple car seats in the back. Still practical, still focused on family, but somehow more hopeful. Like everything else in her life, it had evolved towards something better. Sarah sat in her Tesla for a moment, thinking about the drive ahead. 20 minutes through city streets to her parents' house, where her father would ask about work, and she would tell him about Elena's daughters who wanted to build rockets, about James's quality systems that kept people safe, about David's leadership that prioritized dreams over deadlines. She would tell him about Miguel, who had shown her that the highest form of success was creating a place where 43 children could learn they were worth someone's love. And maybe, as they shared dumplings around the kitchen table where she had once struggled with calculus homework, she would understand that this family, purpose, the knowledge that your work mattered to something larger than quarterly profits, this was what she had been building toward all along. The city pulsed around her with evening energy as Sarah drove home, carrying with her the understanding that success wasn't about reaching the top of some imaginary mountain. It was about creating enough trust that people felt safe to dream, enough opportunity that those dreams could become reality, and enough love that no one had to carry their burdens alone. In the end, the most valuable lesson couldn't be found in any business school or boardroom strategy session. It was written in a janitor's wallet, carried in photographs of children who had learned that some placements were permanent, that some adults kept their promises, that trust once given and honored was indeed everything.